The grand palace of the Aryan Empire stood high above the shining city of Althara. Its towers reached into the clouds, made of crystal walls that glowed in the light of 3 suns. Inside the palace, halls of silver and blue stretched endlessly, lined with carvings that told the history of the Aryan people. Every visitor who entered felt the weight of thousands of years of power and tradition pressing down on them. Princess Lyra walked through those halls with her head high, her long gown flowing behind her. She was admired across the empire for her sharp mind and noble beauty, but her temper was just as famous. Servants whispered when she passed, for they could see her face burning with frustration. She had just left the council chamber, where her mother, Empress Soraya, had announced a decision that shocked the court. Lyra stormed into her private chambers, her heart pounding. She threw aside her golden crown and turned to face her mother, who had followed calmly. The Empress's eyes were calm yet unyielding. "You cannot mean this, Mother," Lyra said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You want me to marry a human? Human of all beings. How can you ask such a thing of me?" The Empress raised her hand, signaling for patience. "This is not a request, my daughter. This is a decree. The humans have grown, and their courage is undeniable. To secure peace and strength for our empire, we must join with them. You will marry the man they send." Lyra's voice rose louder, echoing against the crystal walls. "I refuse to marry a human. They are fragile, weak, and unworthy of royal blood. How can you ask me to bind my life to one who cannot even stand against the storms of this world?" The Empress did not flinch. She moved toward her daughter, her long robes sweeping across the floor. "Do not mistake gentleness for weakness, Lyra. The humans have survived against odds that would have destroyed many other races. They adapt. They learn. They endure. These are the qualities we must respect." Lyra turned away, her hands clenched. She could not accept such words. To her, humans were a younger species, barely out of their cradle. They had no great fleets like the Aryans, no palaces of crystal, no history that reached across galaxies. To think she must stand beside one as a partner was unbearable. The news of the decree spread quickly beyond the palace. In the city below, alien citizens gathered in markets and plazas to argue. Many were outraged. How can the Empress lower the royal bloodline with a human, they said. Others saw it as clever strategy. If the humans rise, we must rise with them. An alliance through marriage may save us from conflict. Back in her chamber, Lyra paced restlessly. She thought of the many noble suitors who had once sought her hand. Princes from allied worlds, warriors with great honor, scholars with wisdom older than mountains. All of them seemed far more fitting than a human. She pressed her hand to the window, looking down at the glowing city. In her heart, she felt as though the Empress was betraying her. That evening, the Empress gathered her council once more. Advisors with faces marked by age and experience stood around the great table of crystal light. They debated the choice fiercely. One elder bowed his head and said, "Your Majesty, perhaps this marriage is too bold. The people are unsettled. Will the humans truly bring us strength, or will they drag us into weakness?" The Empress stood tall, her voice steady. "You forget who we are. The Aryan Empire has always looked beyond pride. When we met the Varians, we welcomed their knowledge. When we crossed paths with the Corran, we adopted their star-sailing craft. Now with humans, we must embrace their spirit. They will teach us what even we have not mastered." The council fell silent. None dared oppose her further. That night, Lyra sat alone in her chamber, staring at the stars beyond her window. She thought of her mother's words, but could not bring herself to agree. She remembered tales of humans who fought with machines made of iron, who traveled with ships that shook apart in storms that Aryan vessels crossed with ease. To her, they were reckless children of the stars. How could such beings deserve a place beside her? A knock came at her door. Her childhood friend, a young attendant named Rin, entered quietly. He had known her since they were both small, and he spoke gently without fear of her temper. "Princess, forgive me, but the entire city speaks of the decree. They say the human envoy will arrive within days." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Let them come. I will make it clear that no human will ever win my hand. I will not bow to this farce." Rin hesitated before speaking again, and if the Empress commands it, Lyra's voice was sharp. "Then I will resist with all my strength." Rin lowered his head, saying nothing more. He could see the storm brewing within her heart. Meanwhile, across the stars, the humans prepared their envoy. Daniel, a young explorer who had faced dangers on forgotten worlds, was chosen not for noble birth but for his courage and honesty. He accepted the mission with quiet resolve, though he knew the task was greater than any he had faced before. Back in Althara, preparations began for the envoy's arrival. The palace servants decorated the grand hall with banners, while guards lined the shining gates. The citizens gathered in vast crowds, eager to see the human who dared claim their princess's hand. Lyra stood with her mother in the throne room, her face cold, her posture perfect. Yet inside her heart was full of fire. She whispered to herself, unheard by anyone else, "I refuse. No matter who this human is, I will never accept him." As the suns began to set and the palace glowed in golden light, the sound of engines echoed from above. The human envoy had arrived. The stage was set and the galaxy held its breath. The three suns of Althara dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon in shades of gold and crimson. The grand palace stood like a jewel at the center of the city, its crystal towers catching the light until they seemed to burn with fire. The crowds outside the palace gates swelled as the sound of engines filled the air. Citizens from every corner of the empire pressed close, eager to witness the arrival of the human envoy. For many, this moment felt like history. For others, it felt like insult. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Is this truly happening?" one voice muttered. "A human standing beside our princess." "It is shameful," another hissed. But some voices carried hope. "Perhaps this is wisdom. Perhaps the Empress sees what we cannot." Inside the palace, Princess Lyra stood at the top of the wide staircase, her gown glittering beneath the bright lights. Her heart was heavy with pride and resistance. She kept her chin lifted, her expression cold. She had sworn to herself that she would never bow to this human envoy. The Empress Soraya stood at her side, calm and composed as always. Her eyes scanned the skies as the sleek silver vessel descended onto the palace landing platform. Unlike the great ships of the Aryan Empire, the human craft looked small and plain. To many watching, it was almost laughable that such a modest vessel could carry someone meant to stand before their royal family. The ship's doors opened with a hiss, and a group of humans stepped forward. Their clothes were simple compared to the flowing robes of the Aryans. They wore sturdy suits designed for travel, not for display. At their front walked Daniel, the chosen envoy. He was not tall compared to the aliens who towered around him, nor did he carry the sharp features of Aryan nobility. His face was calm, his eyes steady, and he walked with quiet confidence. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder. Some scoffed at his plain appearance. Others frowned at his lack of royal symbols. Lyra felt her chest tighten. This was the man her mother wanted her to marry. A man without crown or title. A human who looked no different from the countless traders and explorers who wandered the galaxy. Daniel approached the staircase. His steps were steady, his gaze fixed respectfully on the Empress. He bowed deeply in the human way, pressing his hand to his chest. "Empress Soraya," he said, his voice clear, "I thank you for welcoming me to your world. I come not as a conqueror nor as one seeking favor, but as a bridge between our peoples." The Empress inclined her head slightly. "We welcome you, Daniel of Earth. You come at a time when unity is needed more than ever." Daniel turned his eyes briefly toward Lyra. She met his gaze for only a moment before looking away sharply. She did not wish to show him even the smallest kindness. The Empress gestured toward the grand hall. "Come. The council and the court await." As they entered the vast chamber filled with glowing pillars and seats for hundreds of nobles, the atmosphere grew tense. Alien lords and ladies whispered among themselves, their voices sharp. Many could not hide their displeasure. Daniel walked forward without hesitation, though he could feel the weight of their stares. He had faced storms and wild frontiers before, but never had he stood in a room where every gaze judged him so fiercely. He told himself to stay steady, to remember why he was here. When the voices died down, the Empress rose from her throne. "Today we begin a new chapter. This human has come as envoy, chosen to stand as symbol of peace and union between our people. Let him be heard and let him be tested." At her words, the chamber filled with murmurs again. Princess Lyra stepped forward, her voice ringing with cold strength. "Mother, with all respect, this is not union. This is humiliation. How can we call this man worthy when he has shown us nothing?" The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the princess. Her defiance was not surprising, but it was still bold to challenge the Empress in front of so many. The Empress's eyes softened, though her tone remained firm. "Then let him show us. If worth is doubted, it must be proven. Daniel of Earth, will you accept trials to prove the strength of your people? Daniel bowed once again. I accept. If trials are what it takes to earn trust, then let them begin. I do not seek to force myself upon your people or your princess. I seek only respect, and I am willing to earn it. The nobles whispered again, some impressed, others doubtful. Lyra felt her chest tighten at his words. She wanted to dismiss him as arrogant, but there was no arrogance in his tone. He spoke plainly, with honesty, as though he truly meant what he said. The Empress nodded. Then it is decided. 3 trials will be given, one of strength, one of wisdom, and one of heart. Only if you endure them shall your presence be honored here. Daniel answered, I will face them with all I have. The first trial was declared for the next morning. That night the palace was alive with discussion. Nobles gathered in private halls betting on how quickly the human would fail. Some claimed he would collapse before even the first challenge ended. Others said the Empress was risking too much for a childish experiment. In her private chamber, Lyra sat with Rin, her trusted attendant. Her eyes burned with fire. He will fail, she said firmly. He cannot endure what awaits him. The trials will crush him, and then this foolish plan will end. Rin hesitated before speaking. And if he does not fail, Lyra's voice sharpened. He will. Humans do not have the strength of Aryans. They do not have our wisdom. They do not have our pride. He will fail. But when she spoke, there was a small part of her that felt uncertain. Daniel had stood before the council with calm that she had not expected. He had not begged for acceptance. He had not boasted. He had simply spoken with steady conviction. That small thought unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Elsewhere in the palace, Daniel and his small group prepared quietly. His companions looked nervous, but Daniel's expression did not waver. He sat by the window of the guest chamber, gazing at the stars. This is not about marriage, he told his second-in-command, a woman named Mara. This is about showing them that we are not weak. If we fail, then every word they speak against us will become truth. If we succeed, then a door will open that has been closed for too long. Mara nodded, and the princess. Daniel paused. He thought of her sharp eyes, her proud stance. He could sense her anger even without words. The princess may never accept me, he said at last. But I am not here to force her. I am here to prove that humans deserve respect. That is enough. The night passed slowly. Lyra lay awake, her thoughts restless. She pictured Daniel facing the trials. She wanted to see him stumble. She wanted to see his calm face break with fear. And yet deep in her heart she wondered, what if he endured? What if he proved her wrong? As dawn came, the palace bells rang across the city. Crowds gathered once more, filling the plazas and streets. Nobles filled the grand stands around the trial grounds. The first challenge, the Trial of Storms, was about to begin. The gates opened and Daniel stepped forward into the wide arena. Above, massive machines waited, ready to unleash wind, lightning, and fire. The air crackled with energy. Princess Lyra watched from the high balcony beside her mother. Her eyes were cold, but her heart beat quickly. She wanted to see the human fall. She wanted her words to be proven true. Daniel lifted his head, staring into the storm. He breathed deeply and stood tall. The trial had begun. The trial grounds of the Aryan Empire were older than the palace itself. They were built by the first rulers, long before the city of Althara grew into shining towers. The wide arena was surrounded by walls of crystal stone, and above it stood rows of seats filled with nobles, warriors, and scholars. On this day, the stands overflowed with eager faces. Every eye was fixed on the figure standing in the center of the ground. Daniel stood quietly, his simple human suit clinging to his frame. The Aryan people whispered among themselves. He looked so ordinary compared to the towering aliens around him. His body carried no visible marks of power, no weapons, no shields. The nobles shook their heads, certain that this trial would be his end. At the highest balcony sat Empress Seraya, her face calm and regal. Beside her stood Princess Lyra, her gown shimmering in the bright light. She stared down at Daniel with cold eyes. Her heart pounded with pride and anger. She wanted to see him fall. To her, it would prove what she already knew. Humans were not fit to stand beside her people. The Empress raised her hand and silence fell over the arena. Her voice carried across the grounds. The first trial is the Trial of Storms. Long ago, our ancestors created this place to test courage and will. The storm will strike without mercy. To endure is to prove strength. To fail is to accept weakness. At her signal, the ancient machines hidden in the walls began to stir. The arena shook as the ground split open, releasing pillars of light. Clouds gathered above, dark and heavy, though no natural storm was near. Lightning arced between the machines and winds roared through the arena. The spectators gasped as the storm came alive, filling the air with raw power. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes steady. The wind pushed against him, tearing at his clothes, but he did not step back. He spread his feet, grounding himself against the force. His heart raced, yet he did not falter. The first bolt of lightning struck the ground near him, shaking the arena floor. Dust and sparks rose into the air. Lyra's lips curved into a sharp smile. Surely now the human would stumble. Surely he would show fear. But Daniel did not fall. He bent low, covering his head, then moved quickly across the arena. He did not fight the storm directly. Instead, he studied the rhythm of the lightning, the shifting winds, the timing of the strikes. Each time the bolts came, he adjusted his path, moving with the storm instead of against it. From the balcony, many nobles scoffed. "He runs like a coward," one said, but others leaned forward with interest. "No, he is not running. He is watching. He is thinking." The storm grew stronger. Walls of wind rose like invisible barriers, throwing Daniel back whenever he tried to push forward. The second wave of lightning struck closer, grazing the ground at his feet. Heat surged through the air and sparks burned against his arms. Still, he pressed on. Daniel's companions watched anxiously from the stands. Mara gripped the railing, whispering under her breath, "Come on, Daniel. You can do this." The Aryan guard standing nearby gave her a mocking smile. "Your leader will fall before the storm. Even our strongest warriors struggle here." Back in the arena, Daniel's chest heaved with effort. His legs ached and the storm burned his skin, yet his eyes remained sharp. He noticed something others had overlooked. The lightning was not random. It followed patterns, striking the ground in a sequence that repeated. The winds, too, had moments of pause, brief openings when the force weakened. He remembered the countless storms on Earth he had survived during his travels. He remembered standing on cliffs with rain beating against him, learning that to fight nature was foolish. One must listen, one must adapt, one must endure. With new resolve, he began to move differently. He no longer stumbled blindly, but timed his steps with the rhythm of the storm. When the lightning struck to the left, he moved right. When the winds pushed forward, he lowered his body and slid beneath the force. Slowly, carefully, he advanced toward the center of the arena, where the storm was strongest. The crowd watched in silence now. Their laughter faded as they saw the human moving with focus, his every step deliberate. Sparks burned his clothes and wind cut his skin, but he did not stop. At last, a great bolt of lightning struck the central pillar, sending waves of light across the arena. Daniel reached the heart of the storm and planted his feet firmly on the ground. His body trembled with exhaustion, but he stood tall, raising his head to the sky. The storm roared louder, as if angry that he had reached its core. Lightning struck all around him, yet none touched him directly. He remained still, his arms spread slightly, his face calm. He had not defeated the storm, but he had endured it. The machines began to power down. The wind slowed and the lightning faded. The dark clouds above dissolved into nothing. Silence filled the arena once more. Daniel lowered his arms, breathing heavily. His body was burned and bruised, yet he remained standing. The Empress rose from her seat. Her voice rang clear. "The human has endured the trial of storms. Where many have fallen, he has stood. He is not broken." The crowd erupted with mixed voices. Some cheered, astonished at his survival. Others muttered angrily, unwilling to accept his success. Lyra stood frozen, her heart in turmoil. She had expected him to fail. She had wanted to see him crawl to prove her words true. Instead, he had stood at the heart of the storm and endured. Her pride burned within her, and yet, against her will, a flicker of respect stirred deep inside. Daniel bowed his head to the Empress. His voice was steady, though tired. "Thank you for granting me this chance. I did not come to prove I am stronger than your people. I came to prove that humans do not give up." His words carried across the arena, and though many did not speak, they felt the weight of them. That evening, the palace was alive with talk. Nobles gathered in chambers, their voices sharp. It was luck, some insisted. He cannot last through the next trial. Others shook their heads. No, there was skill in his endurance. He may be more than he appears. In her private chamber, Lyra sat with Rin. Her hands clenched the edge of her chair. "He survived," she whispered. Her voice carried anger but also confusion. "How did he survive?" Rin spoke carefully. "Perhaps he is not as weak as you believed, Princess." Lyra turned sharply toward him. "Do not say that. He is human. They are fragile. He only endured by chance." Yet even as she said the words, doubt touched her heart. Elsewhere in the palace, Daniel lay in his chamber, his body aching. Mara tended to his burns and cuts. He winced but did not complain. "You did it," Mara said softly. "You stood where they thought you would fall." Daniel gave a tired smile. "One trial is done. 2 remain." This was only the beginning. Outside his chamber, the palace guards watched in silence. They had mocked him before, but now their eyes carried a different look. It was not respect, not yet, but it was no longer pure scorn. The next morning, the palace bells rang once again. Crowds filled the stands, eager for the second trial. The labyrinth of shadows awaited, a place of illusions and fear where even the strongest minds could lose their way. Daniel rose, his wounds still fresh, but his spirit unbroken. He whispered to himself as he stepped toward the gates of the labyrinth. "We endure. That is who we are." And the second trial began. The palace bells echoed across Althara as dawn broke and the people gathered once more. By now the human envoy was no longer a curiosity. He had endured storms that broke even the strongest warriors, and had walked through shadows that twisted the minds of princes. Many still doubted him, but none could deny that Daniel had proven something few expected. Inside the throne room, Empress Soraya addressed the court. 2 trials are behind us. The human has shown endurance and wisdom. Now comes the final trial, the trial of heart. It will not test strength of body or sharpness of mind. It will test the choices that shape who we are, the nobles murmured. Some believed this was where Daniel would finally fail, for the Aryans valued pride above all. They expected the human to show weakness, to reveal the selfishness they were certain lay within him. Princess Lyra stood near her mother, her face as calm as she could manage. Yet inside her chest, her heart was in conflict. She had told herself again and again that Daniel was unworthy, that each trial would crush him. But he had endured, and with every success her certainty weakened. She refused to admit respect, yet the thought crept into her mind like an unwanted shadow. The Empress gestured, and the guards led Daniel toward the Hall of Trials. This chamber was different from the others. There were no storms, no illusions, no visible dangers. At its center stood a single glowing sphere, pulsing with gentle light. Around it, 3 paths opened like the petals of a flower, each leading to a sealed gate. An elder stepped forward to explain. "The trial of heart is simple in command, yet heavy in burden. Before you stand 3 gates. Behind them lie choices that will test your spirit. You may choose only one. Choose with wisdom, for the path you walk will show us the truth of who you are." Daniel listened quietly. His body still carried the marks of his earlier trials, but his eyes remained calm. He stepped closer to the sphere, feeling its warmth against his skin. The first gate shimmered with golden light. A voice spoke, deep and smooth. "Take this path and you will earn glory. You will walk away with honor, praised by all. But you will walk alone, leaving others to fall behind." The second gate glowed red. Its voice was sharp. "Take this path and you will save yourself. Your body will be healed, your life secured, but those who stand with you will suffer without your aid." The third gate shone faint blue. Its voice was gentle. "Take this path and you will save another at the cost of yourself. You will know pain, and your journey will end in sacrifice. Yet others will rise because of you." The chamber grew silent. The spectators leaned forward, waiting. Many Aryans believed the first gate would be his choice. For who would turn away from glory? Others thought he would take the second, clinging to life as all creatures did. Few believed he would step toward the third, for it demanded selfless pain. Daniel lowered his head, deep in thought. He could feel the weight of the trial pressing upon him. Each path carried meaning, but only one truly reflected who he was and what humans stood for. From the balcony, Lyra watched with narrowed eyes. She wanted to see him choose selfishly. She wanted proof that her doubts were wrong, that he was no different from the arrogant nobles who cared only for their own gain. Yet another part of her, one she tried to silence, longed to see what he would do. Daniel looked up at last. His voice was steady. "I cannot walk the path of glory if it means abandoning others. I cannot choose safety if it costs the lives of those beside me. The heart of humanity is not in pride or in survival alone. It is in standing for others even when it costs us everything. With those words, he stepped forward and placed his hand upon the third gate. The gate flared with blue light, and the chamber shifted around him. Suddenly, Daniel found himself standing on a narrow bridge above a raging chasm. At the far end of the bridge lay freedom and light. But halfway across, a figure clung desperately to the edge, a guard who had fallen. His armor was cracked, his strength failing. The voice of the trial echoed once more. "Save him and you will fall. Leave him and you will live." Daniel's chest tightened. The guard was not human, not even his ally, yet the choice was clear. He ran forward, the bridge shaking beneath him. He reached the guard, who looked up in shock. "Leave me," the guard gasped. "You cannot hold us both. Save yourself." But Daniel shook his head. "We rise together or we fall together." He grabbed the guard's arm and pulled with all his strength. The weight dragged him down, the bridge groaning beneath their combined load. Pain shot through his body as the edge cut into his hands. The safe path behind him grew farther with every heartbeat. The crowd watching outside the chamber saw only shadows on the glowing walls, but they gasped as Daniel's image struggled against the force of the trial. They saw him straining, saw his body trembling, but they also saw him refuse to let go. With one final cry of effort, Daniel pulled the guard back onto the bridge. The force of the action knocked him backward. The bridge cracked and gave way beneath him. The guard fell to safety on the solid ground, but Daniel plunged into the chasm below. The chamber filled with silence. Many gasped, believing the human had perished. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Against her will, she felt her chest tighten with fear. Then, as the light faded, Daniel reappeared at the center of the chamber. His body bore the marks of the fall, but he stood alive. The trial had judged his choice, and it had found truth in it. The Empress rose from her throne, her voice carrying pride. "The human has chosen the path of sacrifice. He has given us proof that his heart values others above himself. Few among us have walked that path. Today he has shown what many forget." The chamber erupted with noise. Some nobles shouted in outrage. It was a trick. No true strength lies in sacrifice. But others bowed their heads, unable to deny what they had witnessed. Daniel lowered himself to one knee, exhausted but steady. "I did not come to claim glory. I came to show you that humans do not walk alone. We carry each other even when it hurts us. That is our strength." His words struck the court like a blade of truth. Some resisted, but many were moved. Even Lyra could not stop the small spark of respect growing in her heart. She turned away quickly, hiding the conflict on her face. That evening, the Empress called a private gathering in her chamber. Lyra sat at her side, silent, while the council debated. "This human has passed every trial," one elder said. "We cannot deny it." "But he is still not of our blood," another argued. "Do we place the future of the Empire in the hands of one who does not belong?" The Empress silenced them with a raised hand. "The trials are older than this council. They were made to reveal truth, not to please pride. The human has passed, and his worth is proven. Whether you accept it or not, the trials speak louder than our fears." Lyra clenched her fists, her pride warring with her thoughts. She remembered his face as he fell into the chasm. He had chosen pain when he could have chosen safety. No prince she knew would have done the same. Later that night, she stood by her window, staring at the stars. She whispered softly, her voice unheard by anyone. "Why did you not let go, human? Why would you choose to fall?" Daniel, in his chamber, lay on his bed, too tired to move. Mara sat beside him, her eyes full of quiet pride. "You gave them no choice but to see us. You showed them who we are." Daniel closed his eyes. "It is enough. Whatever comes next, they cannot deny it now." Outside, the city buzzed with voices. Some still mocked the human, but others began to speak differently. They spoke of courage, of sacrifice, of heart. For the first time in Aryan history, humans were no longer spoken of only as fragile beings. They were spoken of as something more. And the princess, though she still refused to say it aloud, knew the truth she could not erase from her heart. The day after the trial of Heart, the city of Althara was alive with arguments and whispers. Some citizens praised the human envoy, saying he had shown bravery greater than many of their own. Others scoffed, claiming it was a trick of the trials or a moment of luck. The palace itself carried the same tension. The Empress had declared that Daniel had passed every test. Yet not all nobles were ready to accept such a truth. For centuries they had seen humans as weaker, shorter-lived and too quick to bend before hardship. To now hear that a human had proven himself worthy unsettled their pride. Princess Lyra kept her distance from the noisy debates. She walked alone in the palace gardens, her long robe brushing against the silver grass. She told herself she should be pleased that the trials had ended, that she had been right to resist from the start. Yet she could not silence the image in her mind, the moment when Daniel had let himself fall so another might live. Why had he done that? He had nothing to gain. No reward, no glory. He could have saved himself and walked free. But he had chosen the harder path. Her heart wrestled with a new thought, one she hated to admit. Perhaps she had judged too quickly. Meanwhile, Daniel sat with Mara in a small chamber given to the human envoys. His body was still weak, but his eyes were steady. Mara placed food before him, though he had little appetite. "You carried more than your own weight yesterday," she said softly. "You carried the weight of every human. The Aryans cannot ignore what you have shown." Daniel gave a small smile. "Maybe not. But acceptance will not come so easily. Some of them still see me as less." "Then let your actions speak louder than their voices," Mara replied. The following evening, the Empress called a great assembly in the throne hall. Every noble house was present, their banners spread like rivers of color. The people of the city gathered outside, waiting for the decision that would shape their empire's future. Empress Soraya stood with dignity, her eyes sweeping across the hall. At her side, Princess Lyra stood as well, her expression calm though her heart beat quickly. The Empress raised her hand for silence. "The trials are complete. The human has endured storms, shadows, and the weight of sacrifice. He has passed where many of our own would fail. The law of our ancestors is clear. Those who pass the trials may stand as equals before the throne." A wave of unrest filled the hall. Some shouted in protest. Others called for silence. The Empress did not waver. Daniel stepped forward, his clothing plain, his voice calm. "I did not come seeking a throne. I came to show you that humans are not so small as many believe. I did not fight for myself, but for the respect of my people. We do not wish to rule over you. We wish to walk beside you." The hall fell into silence. His words carried no pride, no demand, only honesty. And honesty, though simple, struck deeper than sharpest weapons. One elder rose. His voice was sharp. "You speak well, human, but words cannot erase what you are. You are not of our blood. How can you claim to walk as one of us?" Daniel looked at him steadily. "I claim nothing. I prove only what I am. If sacrifice, courage, and truth are qualities you value, then you have seen them. If they mean nothing, then reject me. The choice is yours." The elder had no reply. The Empress turned to her daughter. "Princess Lyra, these trials were for you as well. The council awaits your voice. What do you say of this human?" The hall grew still. All eyes turned to Lyra. She felt the weight of her people's gaze and the conflict inside her heart. For weeks she had resisted. She had called him unworthy, had promised herself she would never accept him. Yet now she stood at a crossroad. She looked at Daniel. His eyes met hers, calm and steady. There was no pride in them, no arrogance, only a quiet strength that unsettled her more than any boast. At last she spoke. "When this began, I said I would never marry a human. I believed humans were weak. I believed none of them could understand us. But I have watched this one face trials that many of our own would not dare. I saw him choose pain when he could have chosen safety. He has shown a heart that values others before himself. If that is weakness, then perhaps we have forgotten what true strength is." The hall erupted into noise. Some nobles protested loudly. Others bowed their heads in silence, unable to argue with the truth they had witnessed. The Empress raised her voice above the crowd. "Then it is decided. The trials have spoken and the princess has given her word. The human has proven his worth. Whether in alliance or in marriage, his place is secured." The decision spread like fire through the empire. Some rejoiced, believing it marked a new era of unity between humans and Aryans. Others whispered darkly, fearing it would weaken their bloodline. But none could deny the power of the moment. In the days that followed, Daniel found himself treated differently. Guards who once mocked him now saluted. Servants who once whispered now offered respect. Children followed him through the streets, their eyes wide with wonder. Princess Lyra remained distant, but her distance was no longer cold with disdain. It was careful, thoughtful. She often found herself watching him from afar, her mind wrestling with feelings she had never known before. One evening, she approached him in the gardens. The silver leaves shimmered under the twin moons as she spoke softly. You changed more than I expected, human. You changed me as well. Daniel bowed his head slightly. I never sought to change you, princess. I only tried to be true to who I am. Her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. Perhaps that is why you succeeded. The choice of marriage was still hers to make, and she did not rush. But the walls around her heart had begun to crack. She could no longer say the words she once shouted so proudly. As weeks turned to months, the alliance between humans and Aryans grew stronger. Trade ships moved between their worlds. Scholars shared knowledge long kept apart. Soldiers trained side by side. And at the center of it all stood the human who had walked the trials and the princess who once rejected him. Their bond did not form in haste. It grew slowly, through respect and understanding. At last, when the time came, Lyra made her choice. She stood before her people, her voice clear. I once said I refused to marry a human. Today I choose not because I must, but because I see him not as human alone, but as a partner worthy of walking beside me. The people cheered, some with joy, others with doubt, but the sound shook the palace walls. For the first time in history, two worlds that had once looked upon each other with suspicion stood together, and Daniel, though he had never sought glory, became a symbol of it. Not for power or pride, but for proving that the measure of one's worth lies not in race or blood, but in the choices of the heart. The story of the trials was told for generations. Children grew up hearing of the human who refused to abandon another, of the princess who learned the meaning of strength beyond pride, and of the empire that changed because two souls dared to walk a path no one else believed possible. In the quiet of the palace garden, under the twin moons, Daniel and Lyra often walked side by side. Their words were few, but their silence carried peace. And in that peace, both human and Aryan found the truth they had sought all along, not victory. Not defeat, but unity.